What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Cardfight Casual channel, and if you guys don't know what this is, it is a follow-up to the previous video I did, which was a deck review on this current Nova Grappler deck. It's a budget deck with the updated cards from EB06, Light of Salvation, Logic of Destruction. And if you guys want to check it out, click the top right hand corner to find out what exactly makes up this deck and what this main strategy is, even though I will be going over the strategy, but it's more like how to pilot this deck well. Yeah, so let's get into it. Your grade 1 turn doesn't really matter as much, but if let's say you do get the chance to ride this grade 1, whatever grade 1, it doesn't really matter, and you have a shout in hand, that is probably something you want to do. So what shout does, you can check it out early in the other video, but basically he checks the top card, and depending on which grade it is, you get to either draw or soul charge that card. Now, it's not always a great card because you do sometimes soul charge your triggers, but for the most part, because you do play higher grades or more higher grades than your opponent, you get at least a card out of it most of the time. Of course, there are times when you both draw into grade 0s or grade 1s, or maybe your opponent gets a grade 3 when you hit a grade 1. And those times it sucks, but you know, it's a gamble, and it pays off, you know, whenever you do that. So your ideal hand should look something like this. So this is your ideal grade 2 hand. So this is going into your turn. Let's say you have exactly 1 card of damage. Doesn't really matter what it is, so I'm just going to put it off to the side. Along with these Excel markers, it's not actually on the field yet. But for now, this is your ideal grade 2 hand. So taking a look at this hand, you may be able to see the combo already, but it's something I realized was really insanely powerful. Now the thing about Novas is that once you get to late game, it's really hard for them to survive for a really long time. And for me, I'm actually one of those players that likes control decks. But for Novas, you have to push your opponent early game. And you can't do that on grade 1. I don't know, some clans probably can. But for Novas, the ideal time to shine is grade 2. So what you want to do is to ride your Refilling Razor, call your Burst Razor to the side, call this Razor, Razor Custom to the side, and call Jack to the side as well. So whether or not you want to use Shout doesn't really matter, because at this point your opponent is probably on grade 1, in which case it's really good for rushing them, or they're on grade 2, in which case if they are not a Force Clan and they don't have a 10k base, it is also really good to rush them. So what you want to do is, of course, just swing with that first, and this makes a 17k column. If they're on grade 1, they'll have to drop a 15k card just to block this. Now, you can swing with or without the shout. Let's say you're swinging without the shout, let's say you tapped him for the skill. Use Refilling Razor skill to give the power to the rested Burst Riser. Now, at this point, you don't actually have to give, you don't have to have the Razor Custom, but this is of course the ideal scenario, that you can counterblast 1 when Refilling Razor attacks, give the power, or rather give the power to the Burst Riser for 5k, and then stand both of this using Burst Riser's own skill, and this column becomes 8 plus 14, which makes it a 22k column. Now, that granted, your Vanguard's only 9k, of course if you want to boost the shout it's 15k, but this is a really good combo because it also works against Force, just maybe don't rest the shout beforehand. And you also have Jack at the side, and if the case is that you can't actually hit with Burst Riser because the first one was the trigger, you can, instead of using Burst Riser skill, just straight up give the power to Jack instead. But you want to keep Jack standing first, because in this deck you play a lot of front triggers, and let me tell you, a turn where you go Burst Razor guard for 15, Refilling Razor guard for maybe like 5, into a front trigger where you have another 2 more attacks at 29 and I think this is 34 on turn 2, you are either going to deal a whole bunch of damage, usually around 4 damage to your opponent, or 5 if you get a crit trigger, or you're going to go like deplete the hand size, which makes it much more, or makes it much easier for you to survive in later turns. And that is one of the greatest things about this deck, is that you really rush your opponent really hard and make them drop resources. And now we're going to go on to grade 3s. Now, coming back from the grade 2 turn that we were at, this is probably what your field should look at least a little bit like at this point, because you stand everything else without Jack, you've taken maybe 2 more damage, and hopefully, of course this is the ideal scenario, and your hand looks something like this. So what you want to do is you will ride the Asura Kaiser and get your Force, your Excel marker I should say. And right now, the only problem is that, for now, Jack is still unfortunately rested, and you don't really have any ways around it. But before you do anything else, if you want to use Shout this turn, keep in mind that this is the best time to use Shout, because the top card of your deck is never going to change, and if you do get to draw the card, it gives you more information of what you can and cannot do for the rest of that turn, and it just gives you better options. So for example, if let's say this wasn't in my hand, because this is the ideal hand, but let's say it was at the top, if I used Shout, tap him, and check the top, and I get to draw him, I now have something better than that Razor Custom to put on the rear guard. So let's say I do this, and I call this. Now this is the combo I was talking about, where you can basically use cards like Burst Razor and Razor Custom skills in order to get really the most out of your attacks. So at this point, Jack is still resting, but what you can do is rest Razor Custom and rest Burst Razor as your 2 units that you want to rest. And in this case, you will immediately stand the Genocide Jack, and you will after that subsequently stand this as well. In this case, you only need to use 1 unit to rest, because this Razor Custom will stand up. It won't actually stand up the next time you do it, because Razor Custom skill is once per turn. But for this field, it's really good, because you can swing immediately with this Maximum Razor, and that's a 32k attack. And when you swing with Asura Kaiser, you can Soul Blast 1, Counter Blast 1, and immediately stand Burst Razor. So you're betting on at least maybe 1 grade 3 or 1 grade 2 to stand your last Maximum Razor, and maybe a front trigger or any kind of trigger to pump to your entire front row. Always keep in mind that, you know, for Asura Kaiser, you're not guaranteed any stands, so do keep at least 1 or 2 units standing, so you can get the benefits of triggers and you don't waste them. The worst thing in the world is to swing with this already, and then you swing with Asura Kaiser thinking maybe you'll pull a double grade 3 and then Count Blast 2 to give 2 of them stand and plus 10k, but it just unfortunately doesn't really work that way. And yeah, it's pretty much a gambling game at that point, but always keep it. My preference is 2 units standing at the Vanguard's attack, so that if you do get a front trigger, you get 20k instead of just that 110k, and you really make the most of that front trigger. So this should be your second grade 3 turn, and if you're lucky, this will be the final turn of the game. Luckily for this combo, you don't actually need a lot of Counter Blast. You just need 1 Counter Blast available and 1 Soul Blast available as well, because you're going to be using mostly these 3 cards in the ideal scenario. Now this should be able to finish off your opponent unless they still have a very big hand size even after all the attacks that they've been doing and receiving, or if you're playing against a Force Clan that maybe retires some of your rear guards and you don't have as big a field anymore. Nevertheless, this is the ideal scenario, and here we're just going to go through how it plays out. So if your hand looks something like this, or in fact if you just have 1 Incise Riser, it should be actually a pretty good turn. So after riding the Incise Riser and getting your second Excel Circle, and really anything can be on this Excel Circle, but at this point if you don't have any other rear guards or any other cards in your hand, these 2 being the most ideal, then you can use this opportunity, use Shout skill, tap him, and get a chance at drawing a better card. And then let's say after using Shout, you get one of these 2 cards and you had the other one in hand, you can finally do this combo. So first of all, what you want to do is rest the Razor Custom and the Burst Razor like you did last turn, leaving the Burst Razor rested but standing the Jack column. Now at this point, you would call Refilling Razor to the rear guard, the Excel rear guard circle, and then retire the Burst Razor instead for King of Sword. And King of Swords skill allows you to Soul Blast 1 and give 5k. So depending on what your field looks like right now, we have 27, we have 17, we have 32, and we have 19. So this field is a pretty good field against a Excel or Protect deck, but against a Force deck, you really want to be hitting those numbers. So you can give 5k to the Refilling Razor to give him plus 3k, and you can give 5k to the Maximum Razor because that's actually the most hard-hitting unit, and you'll want that unit to keep on getting the most benefits. But you may be worried that you know, the King of Swords won't be able to attack, or Jack won't be able to hit high enough. And in this case is where you use the skill of the Refilling Razor. So Refilling Razor allows you to give 3k to a unit every time he attacks, and if the unit is rested, you get 5k instead of 3k. Now even though earlier game you want to give it to a rested unit that can stand again, because in this you're using Incise Riser to skill to stand both Refilling Razor and Maximum Riser, what you're actually going to want to do is give that 3k power boost to the units that need it for numbers basically. So what you can do is use a 24k swing at your opponent's Vanguard or rear guard if you want to kill something, you know, like a 10k interceptor or whatever, to give 3k to Jack if you want him to hit 30k against a Force Clan. You can do it for King of Sword, 20k for a Force Clan. You can do it for Maximum Razor if you want to give him that extra boost which is not too bad a strategy. So let's say you give it to Maximum Razor, and he is now 40k, which is really big because a 30k guard is always 2 cards. But if you think about it, a 37k attack to a Force Vanguard is still a 25k guard. So you can kind of think about it, and you can actually give one unit the power twice. So for example, if you know for sure that, or you think that your Vanguard might not be able to hit, then you can give the first 3k to your Vanguard and then the second 3k to King of Swords just so they can hit something, or else you can just give the power to Jack twice and make him hit 33 in his column. So after you swing once with the this is the Refilling Razor, you swing with the Maximum, and then you swing either with a 15k base Incise Riser using Refilling Razor skill, Counterblast 1 and stand these 2. And now what you have is basically you have 7 attacks where each of the attacks are powering each other up. You have plus 5k here, plus 5k here, you have plus 3k maybe twice on here. Or if you didn't boost with Shout, then you don't need the skill, then you can actually put 3k on both sides if you want them to hit numbers. And especially numbers like 30k is really good because it forces a 20k shield. Of course, this is only against Force Clan because 27 also forces a 20k shield for a Protect or Excel clan. Or you can give a plus 3k to the King of Swords to force basically a trigger from their hand or a grade 1. If you use it twice, then it definitely guarantees that trigger. And after so many swings, if they're already at 5 damage, then they're very unlikely to be able to survive this turn, unless they have at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 cards if everything swings at the Vanguard and they're already at 5 damage. And most of these are going to be at least 4 cards from Maximum Razor alone, and possibly more cards because not every card in the hand is going to be a trigger. But yeah, you have free reign, and if you get things like a front trigger or even just one trigger, it doesn't have to be 2 front triggers, but of course the ideal, you pull 2 front triggers and you just have insane columns with insane number of attacks. And yeah, that's pretty much the finishing combo for this deck. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, have fun, and remember, it's okay to play casual.